Barca season is pretty much over. We won the domestic treble, Super Cup, right? Copa del Rey and the league.
Yeah.
We didn't win the Champions League, which
I
it's
know,
a bummer.
sucks,
But I mean, that's still, I believe, because like I said, in previous videos, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season, hey, Barca are gonna go ahead and beat Madrid 4 times in a row this season. They're gonna go ahead and take away 3 titles away from direct titles, which is the Super Cup, the Copa del Rey, and the league, directly from Real Madrid. And the only thing, and also on top of that, you're going to humiliate them twice. Because, Barca did humiliate them twice, 4-0 and 5-2.
Yeah.
And then the only bummer is that you're going to be eliminated from the semifinals of the Champions League by Inter in extra time. I would have told you ahead of time, that's a great season, I'll take it.
Yeah, of course.
That's a great season. I would have taken that season anytime. So, based on that information, I think from a 0 to a 10, right, with, 0 being the worst and 10 being in my opinion, a treble, I will give Barca a 9.5 out of 10 for the season. And the reason why I want to give them that 0.5 is because I think, for both Madrid and for Barcelona, it's hard to beat each other 4 times in a row.
Of course, yeah.
But it hasn't been done before. Not even prime Barca on the Pep Guardiola or on the Luis Enrique with MSN.
It just goes to show you how hard it is.
It's hard. So I think, that has to give, and people can say, yeah, but Real Madrid were bad or horrible. Still, it doesn't matter. Real Madrid are still Real Madrid, right? And Clásico is still Clásico, and a final is still a final, right?
And we can see how hard it was for Barcelona to beat Real Madrid in the Copa del Rey. Because, like you said, right, Real Madrid is still Real Madrid, and a final against Real Madrid is still a final against Real Madrid. And it just shows you how hard Real Madrid is in the finals. I mean,
yeah. So for me, like I said, that's a 9.5 out of 10 season this season. I think it's a solid season. It's a great season. Yeah, we wanted the treble. But, of course, you cannot just expect that every single season, your club's going to win a treble. Plus, nobody in their right mind was talking about a treble at the beginning of the season. Let's be honest.
No, dude, especially, and I would admit, even both you and I,
yeah.
Both you and I, we were kind of, kind of nervous about Flick's arrival.
Yeah,
because we thought that he was gonna have to go ahead and adapt. But before I get into all that, in terms of rating, I had given Barcelona 9. But I agree with you, and I gave them a 9 out of 10. But I agree with you, 9.5, just because I feel that they just fell short from a 10 out of 10 rating. Because this is just our opinion. Other people might be like, no, this is just ours. I think that falling short against Inter Milan, right? A lot of people may not give Inter Milan the credit that they deserve, but if we go back on the videos that both you and I had talked about, bro, we were always kind of nervous about facing Inter Milan.
Yeah, Inter Milan was that one team that...
It was that one team that made us nervous because they eliminated Barcelona from the Champions League under Xavi Amber. And then they even eliminated a prime Barcelona with Jose Mourinho, with Guardiola.
It's always a hard team to face.
It is because, and then, if you look at Barcelona's overall season, right? If we look at Barcelona's overall season, there were mistakes that they made because they made mistakes. In my opinion, they made mistakes that I would say young players make. And let's also not forget, right, that we have players in the squad right now who, such as like Pedri, right, Casado, Fermin, Lamine Yamal, of course, Kubarsi, and I can't think of any. Even Ferran Torres, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, Ferran Torres is still on the young side.
Yeah. But besides that, people
Pau Victor too, right?
Pau Victor, Pau Torre, Gavi,
Gerard Martin.
Gerard Martin.
Force.
I don't even know if Koundé, for example, if they even played in the Champions League semi-final, bro. You get me?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
No, so if you look at Barcelona's squad, I feel that this is an opportunity for them to grow, right? And Inter Milan have done so. If you look at Inter Milan's, let's not forget that Inter Milan, they made it to the Champions League final against Man City in 2023, right? They got knocked off, yes, I think it was in a quarterfinal or semifinal of last season. But then they made it again to the final this season. It just shows you how hard it is to make it to the Champions League final. But everything is it's step by step.
Yeah, it's a stepping stone.
So I think that this is a good season. I think this can just go ahead and hopefully Barcelona next season can play the way they play or keep the same head. And we'll see what happens next season, dude.
Yeah, we'll see what happens next season. Like you said, there was, of course, there was some mistakes that Barca made, but overall, like I said, at the beginning of the season, nobody was talking about Barca playing the way they played, beating Real Madrid the way they beat Real Madrid, dominating some teams the way they dominated some teams, and, having those comebacks that they had. They had amazing comebacks in some of the games. And, against Inter, it was just, like a minute and a half that they were away from actually going to the final. So,
but then, you know what? This goes and shows you and tells you that what I was saying, right? That in my opinion, I think that Barcelona made mistakes that it's understandable, in my opinion, for young players to make.
yeah, it's an experienced young player.
Inexperienced who have never been in that type of competition and in a sense games, because when Barcelona were up, right, instead of looking for that next goal, they could have just kind of wasted time a little bit.
Yeah, time wasted.
And if you kind of notice, I think that Barcelona kind of learned you could say like they learned their mistake, because what did they do against Real Madrid?
Yeah, they were wasting.
They were kind of wasting some time.
Yeah,
because they knew that they had to, bro. Because Real Madrid was kind of getting back into the game too. I'm talking about the last Clásico they played, of course.
Yeah.
So I feel that Barcelona, there's little things that they kind of have to tweak up, kind of like fix and stuff. But I think overall, I'm kind of excited what Barcelona can produce next season, bro.
Yes, and also, we in this season we had the explosion of Lamine Yamal.
But you know what, bro? Do you think it was explosion of Lamine Yamal? Because I think last season he kind of exploded as well.
He did. No, yeah, he did. But I think last season, people were kind of, speculating like, let's see if he can keep this up for one full season. Because I think last season, Xavi, I don't think Xavi played him the whole season.
No, because do you remember, bro, that when Lamine Yamal debuted for Barcelona, it was pretty much in a rotation of, you could say, Xavi trying to figure out if he wanted to play with Ferran or Rafinha. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not mistaken, I think Ferran or Rafinha, one of them two had gotten injured, and then Lamine Yamal got introduced, and he did good. From then,
Rafinha got injured,
right? And then from then on, Lamine Yamal was pretty much playing, but he wasn't a guaranteed starter yet. Xavi took him really slow, in my opinion, bro. Xavi
took him slowly.
Xavi handled him very well.
So I don't think it was really like an explosion. I think this season is the season where people, after the season, they're gonna be like, okay, this guy's a real deal.
Yeah.
We're talking about a pretty much a talented player here, right?
Would you give him the Ballon d'Oro?
I would, yeah. I would. No, I think he's a candidate for the Ballon d'Oro.
Do you think he should win it?
From all the teams, I think he's had the most impact for their team.
Because let's also not forget about Dembélé. Unfortunately for us, well, it's not unfortunate for us. It's just we really don't like Dembélé because we did for Barcelona. But I think he so far has a 53 goal average.
But if you take but Mbappé has a lot of goals for Real Madrid.
Yeah.
So, but if you really take away the goals, do you think Dembélé? Do you think PSG, for example, right? Do you think PSG can go on and continue playing and winning without Dembélé?
Yeah, I think so.
Now, do you think Barcelona can continue going on and playing and winning without Lamine Yamal?
No, because we saw the when Lamine Yamal was injured.
So yeah, I think therein tells you a lot, and therein lies the difference. So that's why, I think, in my opinion, that Lamine Yamal has been more impactful for Barcelona than Dembélé has been for PSG. I think PSG without Dembélé, they'll still continue playing the way they're playing, and they'll still continue, winning matches and being competitive, right?
Well, now that you said it, do you remember what Luis Enrique said in the interview?
Oh, wow.
Because he benched Dembélé.
Oh yeah, I
remember.
remember.
The reporters were kind of telling him like, oh, and he's like, ooh, como que si no puedo. He said like, you think I can win games without Dembélé?
you think we can win games without Dembélé?
That was funny. Luis Enrique is funny, dude.
So yeah, so that's what I'm saying, that Lamine Yamal, in my opinion, I think this season, we had the explosion of Lamine Yamal, and we're gonna see now we can basically look forward to having a difference maker in our team.
I agree,
which we didn't have since Messi.
Yeah, since Messi. Yeah, of course. I think Messi overshadowed everybody, right? Because Messi is Messi, right?
Yeah.
I will say, because I think that we were lucky to have Messi, a generational type player.
Yeah.
I would say the last player that we had, obviously, besides Messi, that was, you could say, a difference maker in the squad, it was Neymar, bro.
Yes,
because if you look at Barcelona's squad, ever since Neymar left, bro, Barcelona were never able to go ahead and fix that left wing position.
Yeah, it's ever since he's been gone, Barcelona have never been able to get a player to effectively replace that left wing, because Neymar was able to do it. If Neymar was able to replace David Villa and Henry.
Mm-hmm.
But let's back up a little bit more. David Villa was able to replace Henry along with Pedro, right? And then after those two, Neymar was able to go ahead and replace David Villa. But ever since Neymar left, there's been nobody that's been able to replace that. And Barca were thinking about getting Nico Williams, which I think he would have probably been able to.
He would have been
But now that I think that's the reason why they kind of want to go for a left winger for the transfer. But we'll see what happens. That's all different.
That's a whole different video because I do, we have our opinions about transfer markets. But yeah, we'll get into that like in other videos and stuff. But I agree with you. Look, if you look at overall, like, look, in general, right? I think what Barcelona did this season you have to give them a lot of merit.
It has to be admired. I think it has to be admired, and I think the reason why is because the way they were dominant against most teams.
Yeah, top teams, right?
Against the top teams, they were dominant, and I don't think there's any team. People were talking about Liverpool, right? That I think Liverpool the best team, Liverpool here, Liverpool there. But I think Liverpool started good, but then they kind of fell down towards the end.
Champions League messed them up.
Yeah, I think they ran out of gas. I think in the second half of the season, I think since January or February, they kind of ran out of gas. But I think Barcelona have been able to keep that level. Yes, they had a dump. I remember
they did, yeah.
They had a dump. It was towards the end of 2024, but they had that dump where they lost a lot of matches and they looked sluggish and whatnot, and tired, and fatigue was starting to kick in. But then in the second half of the season in January, they went on a roll, bro. I think they went on how many games without losing?
I think that Flick was saying that they didn't lose any game in the second season, part of the season, bro.
Yeah, since January. I remember they went on a run. I think they lost recently. So who was it that they lose against?
Wasn't it just last week?
Villarreal.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first game they lost in this year, in 2025. Yeah. So, that tells you, right, that Barca have been able to keep that level. So, that's what I'm saying. I was kind of skeptical. I was, when Barca were going in that nice run, and then they had that slump, I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, it kind of sucks because I don't know if they're going to be able to come back up to that level. But they did. I think they came back up pretty good. And, like I say, it's for any team, okay, getting there, I think it's not as hard as staying there. Keeping that momentum, keeping that, that pace, that energy, right, that motivation. Like Liverpool, an example, right? They weren't able to keep it, in my opinion. They started good, but then they kind of fell down, and then they kind of went downhill from there. So yeah, I think what Barca have done this season overall, in my opinion, it should be admired, and it's a very good season, and that's the reason why I give them a 9.5 out of 10.
Do you think, I was gonna ask you too, do you think that Barcelona's season has been good only because of themselves, or do you think it's also because of Real Madrid's, you could say, slump, but fallen level this season?
But yeah, I don't think Real Madrid were good this season, but I also think that Barca exposed Real Madrid this season as well. I think Barca exposed them, especially in that 4-0. Because remember, leading up to that 4-0, Real Madrid were not as bad. Yeah, they were playing bad, but people were saying...
I thought they were bad before the 4-0, bro. They were already having a bad season.
But it was typical Real Madrid, though, I think.
Well, they start slow.
Yeah, they kind of start slow, and then they kind of pick up towards the end of the season, right? So then... I remember leading up to that 4-0 at the Bernabeu, people were saying, oh yeah, Barcelona, they're doing good, they're going that, but they're going to the Bernabeu. The Bernabeu is a different stadium.
And with the high line.
Yes, yeah. Oh, with the high line, Mbappe's going to score a hat trick. Oh, no, Barcelona done for. And then, Barca went in there and they humiliated them.
Yeah.
So then, that's why I think that Barca actually exposed them, because I think Real Madrid... I mean, if you really look at it, bro, Real Madrid were not any different than the Real Madrid from last season. They were just maybe a little bit more solid in defense, you would say?
I would say that, no, but I think that last season, Real Madrid, bro, they had a better chemistry of playing with one another. I do think that Mbappe kind of ruined the chemistry that Real Madrid had going for themselves. And I think the reason why is because you got to remember, right? A lot of times, people for example, when the BBC for Real Madrid was formed, right? A lot of you had Benzema, right? Who pretty much, in my opinion, kind of, you could say, let Bale or even Ronaldo, especially Ronaldo, kind of take over. Yeah, he would do the dirty work. Yeah, what you call. And then you have Messi, Suarez, Neymar, right? Everybody in that squad knew that Messi was the main guy. But then, if you kind of notice, bro, I think that when Mbappe came this season, I felt like Bellingham was like, dude, I just won my Champions League with Real Madrid my first season. Vinicius Jr. was there, who had just won a Champions League, right? And then you had Rodrigo, who had also, in my opinion, was a huge part of why Real Madrid won the Champions League, right? So then, here comes Mbappe, and he kind of just, you could say, in my opinion, just kind of makes the other players feel like, who are you, dude? We don't need you. We want everything without you. You get me?
Yeah, no, I think he definitely did. It's because it's like that for any team. If, for example, last season they have Vinicius Junior who wasn't really running, tracking back down to defend, and then of course, this season you add another player and doing that just makes the other players run more, right? So it destabilizes the team. So yeah, I think Mbappe that's destabilized the team, but I mean, I do remember, bro, last season Barcelona on the Xavi and the Clásicos at some point being better than Real Madrid.
Oh yeah, I think so too. But I don't think people will remember that.
Yeah, of course, because they're gonna remember the
The scoreboard. Yeah,
And yeah, Real Madrid did win the games, but if you really think about it, I think Barcelona were better on the field.
On the field, yeah.
Than Real Madrid. So I think Real Madrid, bro, in my opinion, yeah, Mbappe destabilized a little bit, but Real Madrid have always played like that. They've never been like, oh.
They've never had a style of play.
They've never been like, oh my goodness, Real Madrid, and then they had this huge slump where, oh my goodness, this is so unrecognizable. Yeah, some players, for example, Mbappe, were not doing a lot of running. Vinicius Junior was not doing a lot of running too. But hey, with that being said, who cares? We're gonna see next season, right?
I think next season.
Next season, there's no excuses. Next season, there's no, oh yeah, it's because Real Madrid were bad. That's why Barcelona looked good. We'll see. We'll see. I think Real Madrid looked bad because I think Barca made them look bad. That's what I think.
What I was gonna say is that what kind of gets me nervous for next season, bro, is that it's kind of like you could say the Xavi situation repeating itself for Flick.
Could be.
Where what I mean by this is like, right now Barcelona pretty much beat Real Madrid 4 times in a row, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they took 3 cups away from them. Mm-hmm. What do you think most, you could say, casual fans, unrealistic fans, because you always have them in every club, are going to be expecting for Flick next season?
Yeah, they're probably going to expect Flick to win the Champions League for sure.
It's the same thing that every fan expects from Guardiola, from Ancelotti, from Klopp, the top coaches. So that's what kind of makes me nervous, the pressure.
The expectations.
The pressure they're going to be given to both the players and the coach. So with that being said, I've always told you this, right? I've always said this. My thing about Xavi was, in my opinion, Xavi did the best job he could have done given the squad and financial situation that he was given when he came to Barcelona, right? I don't think there would have probably been any other coach, in my opinion, bro, to have been able to kind of, put the seeds in, put the seeds in and kind of debut the Kubarsis, the Lamine Yamal, stop Fermin's, sell, you can say, Gavi, obviously still producing Gavi, Pedri as well, he kept playing him, putting Balde and telling Jordi Alba, hey, dude, unfortunately, you kind of have to start going, letting go of Busquets, pretty much, letting go of Piqué, people that he himself played with, it was a really hard job that Xavi came to do. But I've always said that the worst thing that could have happened to Xavi, and that happened to Xavi, was him winning the league title in his first season. Because when the second season came in, everybody thought, okay, Xavi is going to have to do a lot more than this.
Yeah, I agree.
And unfortunately, you could say, he had a bad season, bro. When he had a bad season, I think that a lot of fans, that's why they turned on Xavi. So I'm kind of like nervous and worried about that happening to Flick. Yeah. And sometimes, I think that your own success could be your worst enemy, especially in football.
Yeah. They become a victim of their own success. Kind of like Messi, Ronaldo, where they were they were scoring 40, 50 goals per season. So people were expecting them to score that many goals. People were expecting them to score a hat trick, and if they didn't score a hat trick, then it seemed like, oh, they were off today. I
don't know if you remember, bro. There were some commentary that sometimes would say that Messi and Ronaldo were having bad seasons when they would only score like 30, 35 goals a season.
That's ridiculous, bro.
Or they will go 2 games without scoring. They'll be like, oh, they're off.
And now everybody's praising Mbappe for scoring how many goals in the Liga? 31?
It was 31 goals, right?
Come on, bro. Messi will score that in a bad season.
Messi and Ronaldo were both monsters in the Liga, bro.
They will score that in
a bad season. But I will give Mbappe some credit, bro. First season in La Liga. I don't think that's bad, bro. To be honest, first season in La Liga.
Oh yeah, that's true. All right, we'll see.
You gotta give him credit. Like, now you want Lewandowski to score that. How many goals did Lewandowski score the win the Pichichi last season? I don't think it was like at least 30 goals.
But you know what, though, dude? I think if you put Prime Lewandowski in La Liga, he'll score more.
Oh yeah, I think so, bro. Because you know what, bro? But Lewandowski, me and you have said that, right? In terms of our generation's top 9 tiered elite players, bro. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, right? I would put Benzema first, Suarez second,
Yeah.
and Lewandowski third.
Me too.
Prime number 9s, and
Yeah.
you can say that it's
You're talking
not
about
by.
You're talking about the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And you can't say by. I'm not even gonna say it's a huge dump. No, like gap. No. The only reason why I put Benzema first is because, in my opinion, he did whatever he did for Real Madrid, and he won a Ballon d'Oro. He won a Champions League with Real Madrid, right? And then you have Suarez, and even Suarez, bro. Look how many goals he was scoring for Liverpool. Let's not forget that Suarez even won the Liga with Atletico de Madrid when he left from Barcelona.
That's true, yeah.
And then Lewandowski. We don't have to talk about Lewandowski. What he did for Borussia Dortmund, what he did for Bayern Munich, and then in my opinion, he should have won a Ballon d'Oro himself. And then he came to Barcelona, in my opinion, at 35 years old of age already. And it's not that easy to go ahead and compete against, these young, hungry players.
Yeah, that's true. But, Lewandowski scored 25 goals in a Liga, bro. This season. And he hasn't, and in my opinion, he didn't come to Barca at his prime.
No, he didn't.
He came to Barca, he's 37 years of age, scoring 25 goals in one of the toughest leagues in the world. That's not easy.
And we say toughest leagues in the world because people might be like, "Oh, you guys talking about toughest leagues?" No, La Liga, bro. If you look at it, it's very short space. It's not easy to play.
Not Mbappé will be scoring how many goals, right? But he didn't.
Do you know what's that dude's name from Villarreal, the captain? I think it's Parejo or something like that.
Oh, yeah, the midfielder.
Yeah, Dani Parejo. I think that's his name.
Yeah.
He said that they asked him like, "Who do you think the best player like in La Liga was?" And he said, "For me, it's Yamal." Mm-hmm. And then he said, "What Mbappé does on the field, whatever Mbappé does on the field doesn't surprise me." He said, and so therefore I think that you have to give more credit to what Lamine Yamal has done this season because of how exciting he's been. And just to kind of feed your point, it's true, bro. Mbappé, we've always said it, right? Mbappé, besides being fast and having his little step overs, and all this, he's not a really great finisher as well.
No, he's not really that much of a great finisher. He's missed plenty of occasions. Let's go back to the most recent one in the Clasico where he had that 1-on-1.
Yeah.
He missed it. That would have been the tie right there. So, hey, that's all, but let's see, like you said, this is first season, so we'll see how he does afterwards. Of course, I don't want him to do good, but yeah, we'll see. But, wrapping up, I think, this season, I think Barca, they had a pretty solid season, dude. Like I said, if anybody would have told me that Barca would have had this season at the beginning of the season, I probably would have never believed it.
No, me either.
I would have never believed it.
Especially like how last season finished for Xavi.
Yeah, I would have been like, I would say, my response would have been, no, I don't think so. I think, if Barca even managed to get to the quarterfinals, that'd probably be great because that's what they got last season. Yeah, they're shooting for the semifinal, right? But, if they get to the quarterfinal, that's good. And if they win the league or one title, we're okay. That would have been my response. Mm-hmm. But they took, like we said, they took 3 titles away from Real Madrid directly. And then, they did what they did in the Champions League, being one of the best teams I think the best team in Europe, in my opinion. Okay, in terms of...
I can't really say best team in Europe, bro. I mean, obviously, I think they're in my opinion, top 3.
So, do you think, any team in the world, which team do you think, let's say Barca have all their players, and let's say the opposition have all the players as well. Which team do you think, head-on-head, in one game, can actually defeat and outplay Barcelona?
Outplay Barcelona right now
and defeat them?
I don't know. I won't be worried about PSG the way Luis Enrique is playing.
I don't even think PSG. Maybe PSG.
PSG's been playing good, bro.
Yeah, maybe PSG. But let's say Barca have, like I said, their full defense, their full squad, and everything, and they're playing their best.
I'm going with Barcelona.
Me too. That's what I'm saying. So I think, in my opinion, at first I would have said Liverpool, but Liverpool slowed down a lot, and then PSG knocked them out. And in my opinion, bro, PSG knocked out Liverpool that was already slowing down. But it wasn't like a prime.
Let's not forget, bro, that when PSG lost that game against Liverpool, Liverpool didn't shoot in the whole.
Oh, that is true. Yeah, I remember that.
They were dominating Liverpool, bro.
Yeah, but if you also look at the return leg at Anfield, Liverpool were better, and they should have scored more goals.
PSG dominated Liverpool on both legs, bro.
Okay.
When Liverpool beat PSG, that was their only shot of goal in the whole game, bro. That's why Luis Enrique was mad.
Okay.
So in my opinion, I feel like PSG has been like a sleeping, a sleeper team. How a lot of people don't put Inter Milan there all the time. I feel like that's been PSG surprise team this season.
That's true. Yeah.
But like I said, I mean, we also came. let's not forget that Barcelona came into the Champions League endings of Champions Leagues, right, without a right back and left back.
And let's also not forget that PSG started bad.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, because they almost
got knocked out of the Champions League group stage. So I mean, Barcelona did not start bad.
Yeah,
Barcelona have kept the same level in my opinion. Besides that dump that they had,
yeah,
but Barcelona have kept the same level the whole season. PSG went from bad to better. Yeah, that's true. But they started bad, and if they would have had more competition in their own league, they probably would have never won the League One.
Well, let's see. I mean, I'm kind of curious to see what like other people think about Barcelona's overall season ratings.
Yeah, that's true.
Just go ahead and say like what rating you would give them, but let's not be unrealistic, dude. Like I feel like Barcelona had a great season in my opinion, a great season actually. Perfect season would be the Champions League, of course.
Yeah.
But then the Champions League, dude, it's always hard to win it. We want it, of course, but it's very hard to win, especially when you have other good teams around you.
And like I said, sometimes the best team doesn't get out of the semifinals. No. Sometimes the best team doesn't win the semifinals. So, that's that. So, but yeah, we'll see what happens next season. But yeah, this season so far, we both agree that it was a solid, good season, right?
Yeah, I think great season.